Hi everyone, I have a really quick mask making tutorial for you guys. These are pretty easy and quick to make, and today's mask I made for a friend, and I've made a handful for those around me as they've asked for them. I got the pattern from For a Nurse by a Nurse off of the makemasks2020.org website. They are a great website that has organized information on mask making and all of the materials and facilities that are needing of masks. If you are looking to make masks to donate, as I have been doing outside of the mask I've been making for personal use and for friends, these masks don't necessarily replace the N95 respirators, but they will help a facility in need. As for the efficacy of these homemade masks, please check out the study down in the description box that notes the usefulness of certain kinds of fabric. These masks are a good alternative for those who need personal protection equipment, but not necessarily the N95 masks, and can then donate their N95 masks that are unused to those on the front lines. Again, please go to makemasks2020.org for more information on donation. They have a forum as well as a donation form, and they'll help match you to the right place to donate your masks. They have several patterns for all skill levels. It's an overall amazing resource for those who have the time, means, and ability to make these masks at this time. I cut the pattern out of 2 pieces of cardstock so they're sturdy and easy to trace. The first cutout has the front piece mapped out with clear guides for the pleats. The back piece has the lines for the darts cut out. For this project, I had extra quilting cotton that I'm using, and as I'm tracing the pattern on the cotton, I'm clearly marking where the pleats go. I then pinned the pieces together with the back sides of the fabric facing together. You don't have to have separate patterns for the front and back, although it does make it easier while you're sewing to remember which side is the front and which side is the back, and it's a little bit more fun. The pattern also calls for several strips of fabric to be cut out and made into bias cut ties, although you can just use twill tape instead of the bias cut ties, or you can pretty easily edit this design to use elastic, which I'll be doing in this tutorial. I sewed the front and back pieces with a 1/2 inch seam on all 4 sides. I then took the pins out. You guys can see there the 1/2 inch seam. Next, I went in and started folding my pleats. I folded up on the first line on the front of my mask and pinned that down to keep it secure. I then folded the piece back down to finish the pleat along the second marking that I made. I did that with all 3 marked pleats that I pinned in. All 3 pleats were pinned down and then sewed down on the edges. Afterward, I ironed it down. It's up to you if you want to iron first and then sew. I just found it easier to do as much sewing first before going and pressing. So here I am pressing the pleats, making sure they're nice and crisp. I then got one of the strips of fabric and cut it down to size for the side edges of the mask, leaving about a 1/2 inch in length on the top and the bottom. To clean up that raw edge, I flipped the strip over and placed the edge aligned with the edge of the front side of the mask, and then sewed on that 1/2 inch seam line. I flipped the mask over and then folded the edge about a 1/4 inch and then lined up that edge with the 1/2 inch seam line and sewed it down. It's a little bit fiddly and differs a little from the pattern guidelines, but again, this was purely for my convenience and can be altered to make your process faster as well. I trimmed off the excess fabric and repeated on the other side. Now this is where the elastic can be attached. I cut about a 6 inch piece of elastic, although this will depend on how you want it to fit. This particular mask was made for a friend of mine, so it fit their specifications. If you are following a pattern that calls for elastic, please follow those guidelines. And if you are making masks to donate, double check with makemasks2020.org on what they recommend for elastic. If you'd like to make masks with ties, you can use the twill tape and cut 2 36 inch pieces to sew on the top and bottom edges of your mask, which will then tie around the back of your head on a horizontal axis, or you can make the bias cut ties, which the original pattern calls for. I'm now tracing the dart lines with my cutout pattern on the back side of my mask, which I then folded in half front sides facing in and sewed along the lines that I drew. The extra fabric was cut with about a 1/4 inch fabric left at the seam. I can't find my pinking shears, but it's probably a good idea to use those instead. I'm now cleaning up the top and bottom edges with strips of fabric again, using the same method as the sides, and this is your completed mask. Here is an example of what the bias cut ties look like on a mask that I previously made. Again, twill tape is an excellent substitute for bias cut strips since those can take a bit longer to sew and finish. And that is everything. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Again, I urge you guys to go visit makemask2020.org for all the information. I'm by no means a professional seamstress, but these are easy to make and can be finished in about 15 minutes once you get everything prepped. Otherwise, I hope you're all doing well, especially in this time of uncertainty, and I hope you're all staying safe and healthy.